top 5 tips for working from home. The first thing is to make sure you have a good routine. Again, this is something on everyone's list of top 5 tips, but it's not so easy to do. What I would say about routine is it doesn't necessarily have to be the same every day. For example, my routine is different. So on a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday, I tend to get up early, do an hour of reading because it's nice and quiet because everyone's in bed. Between about 6:30 and 7:30, then my daughter will get up and I'll make her breakfast, or we'll do a bit of reading together. Then I'll make her breakfast, and then the kind of day begins. On a Tuesday and Thursday, I go for a run early in the morning, and again get back around 8 o'clock, make breakfast, and the day begins. So your routine doesn't necessarily have to be the same every day, just to have one. Again, I'm just reading a book at the moment on how we sleep, and I know you've got a sleep seminar coming up, so something I would definitely encourage you to sign up for, because it turns out sleep is very important. And what it says is that some of us are morning larks and some of us are night owls. And one thing that you might be able to take away from being able to create your own routine is if you're a night owl, perhaps you can then start your day a little bit later. You can start your day at 10, 11 o'clock if your role lends itself to that, and then work later on in the evening. So develop your own routine, do what's best for you, but have a routine, make a plan, and try to stick to it. The other thing about working from home, and this is one that I really struggle with, is managing distraction. Anybody that's there, that's listening to this, that has children at home will understand that they can be a distraction. It's not their fault. They're at home. They're trying to do their homeschooling, and they've got their needs. But they can be a distraction if you're trying to focus on things. So you have both internal and external. So internal distractions in terms of your work and your life and your family, and you've got distractions in terms of work distractions. So in terms of the life distractions, as I say, children, partners, other housemates, you may have family that you're looking after, that you're concerned about, other worries and concerns around the pandemic or otherwise. So those can be distractions. And then you have work-related distractions, people sending you emails, popping up every 5 minutes when you're trying to write, maybe a paper or something. So it's how we manage it. How do we manage these distractions? So a couple of things. Number one is going back to your routine. So if you can have a routine, when you're thinking about designing your routine, can we talk to other people in the household and maybe ask them, can I have this time protected for focus work? I know sticking your kids in front of a movie is not thought to be very good parenting, but for a couple of hours a day, perhaps when they finish their schooling, maybe we can rent a movie for them, get them to sit in front of that for 2 hours, and that gives you 2 hours of time to focus on something important. The other thing about distraction is, again, noise in the background. I often wear headphones and put some classical music. Nothing I can recognize, and nothing I can listen to actively, but just some classical music in the background. Lots of playlists on Amazon, etc. And that would just help to block out some of that intelligible noise, which is what really distracts us. The other thing about this focus is trying to find those periods of time where you can really lock in. So turn off your emails, turn off your messages, turn off your phone, and really try to focus. Now, I use something called a Pomodoro timer. You may have heard of the Pomodoro technique, which is essentially having 25 minutes of focused time where you pick a task and try to just lock in on that task, take away all other distractions, and do that for 25 minutes. At the end of that 25 minutes, I have this thing called Be Focused. And what that does is, if you can look up here, I can click on here, that gives me a 25-minute timer. And on top of that, I've got what I'm actually going to be doing during that time. So I'm going to be writing a report. At the end of that 25 minutes, so again, you can select what task you want to add a new task. At the end of that 25 minutes, you have a 5-minute countdown timer. In that 5 minutes, what I will do is I'll stretch. I'll stand up, I may lie on the floor even and just stretch my back. And just for a couple of minutes, I might go and get a drink of water and then I'm going to come back and check my emails and do some of that shallow work, the kind of that work that doesn't require too much focus. You can see on here, I tell you, one of the main distractions I have, just as a little sidebar, if you look on the top of the screen here, you see this number 5.2, and then it's got a straight arrow and then 0.0. That is my daughter's blood sugar. She's type 1 diabetic, and she has a sensor on which records her blood sugar every 5 minutes. And I can see that on the top of my computer screen. And that's really distracting because every 5 minutes I'm checking, that's changing. So what's happening with the blood sugar today? We have to try to keep it within this range of 5 and 8 with insulin and food. And so it's really distracting. So I often have to just turn that off for a little while so that it's not a distraction. And the nice thing about these timers is that as well as giving you that kind of work, focus time, rest time, focus time, rest time, is at the end of the day, you can go back and you can see what you've done with your time. So I can see recently I've been spending more time on developing webinars. Okay, that's what I wanted to be doing at this time. There's a manual handling course handout that I'm trying to update. So maybe I need to spend a bit more time on that if that becomes a priority, because that's only got one Pomodoro allocated to it. So you can go back and reflect what you've been doing with your time and maybe think about how you're going to change your routine going forwards to actually prioritize things that are most important. So that one's called Be Focused. It's on the Mac App Store. If you're using Microsoft, a PC, then you can go to the Microsoft App Store, and there's things like this, Focus To Do, which is a free app that you can get on a PC. And there are a number of others. If you just put Pomodoro timer in the search section, then the number of them will come up, but this one is supposed to be pretty good. So think about your nutrition, plan it along with your routine, and then obviously the other thing that we need to consider, which we'll talk about shortly, is breaks and exercise. So mental health, how are we managing our mental health during this time of stress? So again, one thing we need to think about, again, is trying to create a positive physical workspace and planning our days and reflecting on our days. So we've already touched on that, those two things. But again, really important, really helpful in terms of managing our stress and anxiety. The other thing I want you to think about is your thoughts, managing your thoughts. And that might sound a little bit woo, if you like, airy and fairy, but really it's just about noticing when you're thinking about things that are outside of your control. There's this thing called Stephen Covey, his name is. He wrote this book, The 7 Habits of Successful People. And in it, he talks about this circle of influence and circle of concern. So you have the circle of control and influence, so what you can control and what you can influence directly, and a circle of concern, which is thinking about things that are worrying for you, such as the pandemic, such as your family, which you really have no control over. And we want to try to limit the amount of time we spend thinking about those things that are in the circle of concern, and spend more time thinking about things within our circle of control and circle of influence, like doing some exercise, like taking breaks, like doing perhaps some meditation or something like that, to try to help manage our anxiety levels and our pressures that are on us at the moment. Let's think about posture. Bad posture, so what? Is bad posture bad for you? So what is bad posture first? So it can be defined as an habitual self-imposed positioning that causes physical stress, especially coping poorly with postural challenges. Now, what do we mean by postural challenges? Well, working from home could be a postural challenge. If you're sitting on a dining room chair without support to your spine that you might get from a task chair in the office, then that could be a postural challenge. If you work on a laptop where the screen is too low and bring you into the posture that you see in this lady here, that could be a postural challenge. So coping poorly with postural challenges. In other words, we're experiencing symptoms, experiencing pain when we have these postural challenges. Now, there's no evidence that bad posture, so sitting in a suboptimal position, is linked to back pain. Our thoughts, experiences, beliefs, stress, poor sleep, lack of exercise, all these things that we've talked about are all far more likely to cause pain and discomfort than your posture. Now, even though I say a bad posture is not necessarily linked to back pain, what is linked to back pain is prolonged postures. So if we're sitting in one position for extended periods, that is more likely to cause you pain and discomfort, regardless of how you're sitting. Now, if you're sitting with more neutral joint positions, then you're less likely, you could probably sit for longer than you could if you didn't have neutral joint positions. However, it's the length of time that we're sitting that's really the key factor. Okay, so just to bear that in mind. It's not to say that sitting with these postural challenges is not going to put more strain on your spine necessarily, but there's no evidence that leads to long-term back issues. What I would say is that if you're constantly spending long periods sitting, that is more likely to lead to back issues. For now, I just want to talk a bit about posture. So what is a neutral posture? When I talk about neutral joint position, what I'm talking about is joints being in their mid position. So if you look at my wrist, if it's this way, it's in full flexion. If it's that way, it's in full extension. If it's here, it's in the mid position, which is the neutral position. In this position, there's very little strain on either side of the wrist. Now, with the spine, we know we have a nice S shape. We have an inward lumbar lordosis, a curve that dips in here, and we have an outwards thoracic kyphosis, which curves outwards from here to here. What we do when we sit down and we adopt poor postures, what happens is the pelvis rocks backwards, flattening out that lumbar curve, and accentuating the thoracic curve, so we end up in, I call it the Gollum posture. So we're in slump C-shaped spine, something that we really want to avoid. Now, one way we can try to improve that is to have the knees higher, lower than the hips. If you can see my knees and hips here. So if my knees are below my hips, it puts my thigh bone down and rotates my pelvis forwards, which helps me to maintain my lumbar lordosis. So if my knees are above my hips, it rotates my pelvis backwards, which flattens my lumbar spine and puts me towards that C-shaped position. Okay. Now, if you look at my workstation, you can see I'm sitting on a dining room chair. I'm not sitting on an office chair per se. How can I improve? Now, what's good about it? What's good about this is that the height of this actually puts me in a position where my arms are level with the top of my dining room table. So actually that works quite well. I've got a laptop stand, screens at a good height, all good. The problem with the height of the chair, because I'm quite tall, is that my knees are now higher than my hips, pushing my pelvis backwards. What can I do to address that? A couple of things. One, I get nice and close to the workstation. I can drop my knees below my hips, and then I'll take a cushion and just push that in along the spine, lean back into there, and now my pelvis is rotated forward in neutral, my lower back is supported, and I'm in a comfortable posture. Just by bringing my hips down, bringing my knees down relative to the hips, and having a little cushion in my lower back. Much better posture, and much easier to maintain. I can't really slump in that position. I'm very well supported. Now, I don't want to spend all day or even very long in this position, because what's going to happen is my knees are going to get strained because I'm tucking my knees right underneath me. So I'm going to bring my knees forward a little bit, and I'm going to lean back in that position. Not great for the back, but for a short period, it's fine. Then I'm going to do, remember, the best posture is the next posture. So it's really about bearing it. Even if you're sitting, even if you don't stand and move, which I will do anyway, every 25 minutes, at least during that time, I can fidget, I can move around, I might cross my legs, I might even have my laptop further back. I lay on the desk for a minute while I'm looking at something, and then come back to that position and just reset back to my neutral posture. And if you can have separate input devices, then that's always the best. And they don't have to be anything special. Any mouse, any keyboard that you can get hold of. If you can pop when you're getting your food shopping in, and in Asda, pop upstairs, grab a keyboard and a mouse for a £10 or whatever they cost, and then it'll help you set up immensely. Just a few pictures of other people's workstation. Pros and cons of this one: the wooden chair. Again, you may want to add some cushion into that chair. The laptop would ideally be raised. So this is a nice one, because what you can see the person's done here is they've looked at their chair and they said, well, the seat's hard, so I'm going to put a cushion on it. And it's also too low, so that when I'm working, my arms are in a poor position relative to the top of the desk, to the keyboard and the mouse. So what they've done, you can see here, is they've put a block of wood underneath the chair just to raise the whole level of the chair up to a comfortable height. Good thinking. Of course, they've raised the laptop on a wicker basket and have a separate mouse and keyboard. Remember, breaks doesn't necessarily mean stopping work. So you can find other ways to work. For example, here's me earlier on, looking at different ways of working. So in the top left, you've got me lying on the sofa. I've had a little bit of back pain recently. Took the opportunity to do some gardening. The first time I've gardened for years, and digging the garden for 2 hours, my back's a little bit sore. So working at a workstation, sitting on the chair was uncomfortable. So I decided to go lie on the sofa. And I did that for about 15 minutes. You can see my neck is well supported, my arms are supported, got cushions on my lap to put the laptop in the right position, and it's comfortable for short periods of time. Similarly, sitting on the right-hand side, sitting on the sofa. It's not the end of the world as long as you're not doing it for all day. But for 10, 15 minutes, it's a break from your normal working environment. Any change is good. Bottom left is me on a call, and in the middle, we've got me using the phone. You work elsewhere is a good thing. Exercise, we all know the benefits of exercise. Please try and do some. There are huge benefits in terms of mental health, physical health. People often ask me, which is the best exercise? My answer to that is always any, as long as you do it. There's no point in signing up for a 12-week Pilates class, which is on the other side of the city, if it's going to be difficult to get there and you're just not going to be able to commit to it. Find something that's easy, something that you enjoy. Ideally do it with somebody else or another group of people, because that will help your consistency, but do something consistent. Now, if I had to choose, squats. Resistance training, so training where you're moving weight, or including your body weight, against gravity is being shown to be hugely beneficial. It's probably, if we're honest, is probably in terms of overall health and well-being, the most important type of exercise: resistance training, strength training. There's a study that showed that strength training in over 60s reduces all-cause mortality by 46%. That's strength training twice a week. So if you want to jump on YouTube nowadays, you've probably seen there's lots of apps on there if you want to do some home exercises at home. Joe Wicks. I tend to use one on my phone called Freeletics, which is purely bodyweight exercises. I do that twice a week. Again, Google it. There are lots of things to try for free. If you like them, you can sign up. But whatever it is, whatever you think you might enjoy, give it a try. Really, really important to try to get some exercise in. Ideally, most days, if not most days, and 3 to 4 times a week, or even just getting out for a walk is really beneficial. So try and do that if you can.